Welcome to a place where silence turns into longing, where desire that was buried for decades rises again, and where love is not just remembered but reborn. Here, every story is more than words. It's the pulse of a heart rediscovering what it means to be alive. You'll feel the ache of loneliness inside a marriage that grew quiet, the spark of the unexpected when eyes linger too long, the storm of desire when touch returns after years of emptiness, and the breathtaking rebirth of love when laughter, passion, and fire flood back into a life thought. Forgotten, these aren't just stories, they are awakenings. If you've ever longed, if you've ever craved to feel again, you'll find yourself here. Stay, listen, and let every word pull you into the raw truth of love, passion, and rediscovery. The silence inside a home is not always peaceful. Sometimes it is heavy, almost suffocating, like a weight pressing down on the chest. There are nights when two people can share the same bed, yet feel as if 1,000 miles stretch between them. The rhythm of another's breathing, once comforting, becomes a reminder of absence. The warmth of a body beside you turns into a cruel echo of a touch that never comes. What once was alive between two hearts slowly withers, and the quiet grows louder than any words ever could. There was a time when every glance carried meaning, when every hand held spoke of tenderness, and every kiss promised more. Those early years were filled with laughter, with late-night conversations that stretched until dawn, with the unshakable belief that forever was built on love alone. But time, as it often does, wore down the edges. Words became shorter, smiles became rarer, and the bed, once a sanctuary, became a place of ritual sleep rather than passion. Loneliness does not always come from being alone. It comes most deeply when closeness is stripped away while presence remains. To lie next to someone who does not see, who does not reach, who does not remember the softness of a lover's embrace. That is a wound invisible to the world. Night after night, the body remembers what it once knew, hungering for warmth, for a hand tracing the curve of skin, for lips whispering devotion in the darkness. Yet all it receives is silence. There were times when the tears slipped quietly onto the pillow, never loud enough to disturb, never strong enough to break the wall that had been built. Questions filled the mind in those moments. Was the love gone? Was the beauty faded? Was desire something that had an expiration date, leaving behind only duty and habit? The heart still longed, still ached, still believed it could be awakened, yet the silence grew, and with it, a kind of surrender. Days turned into years, and years turned into decades. The routines of life kept the emptiness hidden from the outside world. Smiles were painted on at gatherings, anniversaries marked with polite dinners and forced toasts. To anyone watching, it looked like stability, like longevity, like success. But beneath it, there was a loneliness no one could see, a kind of hunger that never left, that pressed against the skin every time the lights went out, that whispered through the stillness of the bedroom. The soul does not stop longing simply because it is denied. Even when passion is silenced, the body remembers. The memory of fingers tangled in hair, the fire of lips pressed hard against lips, the trembling of skin alive under touch, all of it lives within, waiting, restless. Each night, the ache returned, sharper because of the absence. Each morning, the mask was worn again, pretending everything was whole, pretending the silence did not matter. And yet, deep inside, there was always the quiet plea for more. Not more years, not more promises, but more life. To feel the rush of blood under the skin, to feel the breath quicken, to feel wanted again, to be seen not as a partner of convenience or habit, but as someone desirable, someone worthy of passion, someone alive. The silence of longing is not just the absence of sound. It is the absence of being truly touched, truly known, truly loved. Loneliness builds slowly, and in its shadow, even memories can become both comfort and torment. Closing the eyes, sometimes it was possible to remember the way passion once felt, the way desire once consumed two souls. but opening them again only revealed the distance, the wall that could no longer be crossed. The silence was not just in the house, it was inside. Years of this emptiness carve out a hollow that nothing else can fill. It becomes part of the rhythm of life, a companion as familiar as the ticking of the clock. But unlike the clock, it does not move forward. It holds still, pressing down, reminding constantly of what is missing. The heart beats, but without the fire that once made each beat a promise. The body moves, but without the thrill of anticipation that once lived in every touch. This was the life that stretched on, year after year. A marriage intact on the outside, yet inside, a quiet sorrow. The kind of sorrow that never screams but slowly erodes, wearing away at joy, at hope, at desire. Until one night, when the silence was finally broken, not with words, but with a touch that carried everything that had been longed for. It happened on a night that was meant to be ordinary, the kind of night that usually slipped quietly into the next day without leaving a trace. The air was still, the room dim, the silence the same heavy blanket that had lain over so many years, and yet something shifted. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, but it was undeniable. An energy that had long been forgotten seemed to stir, like an ember catching wind after nearly burning itself to ash. It began with a presence, not just a person in the room, but a nearness that carried heat, that made the skin prickle in awareness. There was a look that lasted a heartbeat too long, a glance that seemed to reach past the surface, straight into the places that had been starving for recognition. It was not planned, it was not spoken into existence. It was simply there, sudden and alive, cutting through the years of distance like a flame in the dark. The smallest touch can carry the weight of a storm. Fingers brushed against a hand, and it felt as if the air itself cracked open. It was not just contact, it was fire meeting water, heat surging where there had only been cold. The body, dormant for years, remembered instantly what it meant to feel. Nerves came alive, breath caught, and the silence that had stretched so long shattered in an instant. There was no rush, no desperation, only a slow unfolding, as though time itself wanted to savor the moment. Words were spoken, not loud, not many, but they carried a heat that could not be ignored. Each syllable dripped with meaning, awakening something deep, something that had waited far too long. The eyes lingered, holding not just a gaze but an unspoken promise. A promise that desire was not gone, that passion could be resurrected, that life could still surprise. The room seemed smaller, the air thicker, the distance between two bodies suddenly unbearable. Every moment felt charged, every movement magnified. A smile that carried mischief, a glance that lingered on lips, the slow lean of a body closing the gap. Each detail carved itself into memory with the sharpness of longing fulfilled. The loneliness that had reigned for decades dissolved, replaced by the intoxicating rush of being wanted, deeply and without hesitation. When lips finally met, it wasn't just a kiss. It was an eruption of everything that had been buried, every hunger, every ache, every silent plea. The taste was both new and familiar, like rediscovering something once cherished but thought lost forever. Hands that had forgotten their purpose found it again in the tracing of skin, in the claiming of a body that trembled not from fear but from awakening. Every second carried the weight of years lost. Every touch was layered with all the touches denied for so long. The body, once resigned to silence, now screamed in sensation. The heart, once dulled by neglect, pounded as though it had found its reason to beat again. And in that moment, there was no past, no future, only the undeniable truth of being alive, of being desired, of being pulled into a fire that consumed the loneliness whole. The unexpected spark did not feel reckless. It felt destined, as though it had been waiting patiently beneath the surface all along. A hunger that could no longer be silenced, a truth that could no longer be denied. It was not about betrayal, not about sin. It was about resurrection. To feel the blood rush, the skin burn, the breath quicken, to remember what it meant to be alive not just in body, but in soul, that night became the dividing line between emptiness and awakening. The silence that had once ruled was gone, replaced by the hum of desire that refused to fade. It was not simply about passion, it was about connection, a connection that healed, that mended the cracks left by years of being unseen, a connection that lit a fire inside that could no longer be extinguished. And from that night on, the memory of loneliness no longer haunted like a curse. It became the shadow that made the light burn brighter. It became the reminder of what had been missing and why the spark of the unexpected was nothing short of salvation. It began slowly, almost cautiously, like the first drops of rain before a storm. A touch that lingered longer than it should have, a kiss that pressed deeper, carrying the weight of everything that had been denied for far too long. At first there was hesitation, the kind that comes after years of silence, after years of forgetting what it feels like to be wanted. But hesitation gave way to hunger, and hunger became something uncontrollable, a force that consumed every thought, every breath, every part of the body that had been sleeping for decades. The taste of lips was like oxygen after drowning. Each kiss was not only passion but resurrection, a calling back to life. Hands roamed with a desperate tenderness, exploring curves and skin as though mapping a sacred place long lost. Every sigh, every gasp, every shiver was a reminder that the body had not forgotten, that it had only been waiting for the right spark to awaken what had always been there. The years of emptiness seemed to vanish in an instant, swallowed whole by the storm of desire that broke free without apology. It wasn't just about lust, though lust pulsed hot and undeniable in every heartbeat. It was about recognition, about being seen not as invisible, not as forgotten, but as someone worth holding, worth desiring, worth devouring. In every stolen breath, in every trembling kiss, there was more than flesh against flesh. There was the rediscovery of what it meant to be alive. The body trembled beneath hands that pressed and claimed with both hunger and reverence. The weight of another against the skin felt like gravity itself, pinning the moment in place so it could never slip away. Each movement carried urgency, but also a strange gentleness, as though passion itself knew this was not just about pleasure. It was about healing, about filling the hollow spaces that had been carved by years of neglect. Every sound that escaped, every whispered moan, was louder than the silence that had once ruled the nights. The sheets tangled, the air thickened, the world outside ceased to exist. Time seemed to collapse into that moment, where nothing mattered but the storm raging between two bodies that had found each other against all odds. Every thrust of desire, every desperate kiss, felt like a rebellion against the decades of loneliness. The storm built higher, fiercer, until there was no room for thought, only feeling. The heat of skin against skin, the wetness of lips searching, the pounding of hearts in sync with one another. Passion, raw and unfiltered, flooded every nerve, every vein. And yet within that fire there was tenderness, hands that lingered to caress, eyes that searched as if to say, I see you, I want you, you matter. The hunger was more than physical. It was soul, deep, the kind that cannot be satisfied in a single night, the kind that lives on long after the storm subsides, to be kissed until breathless, to be held as though life itself depended on it, to feel the body consumed by another's need. This was not just passion. This was rebirth, and in the quiet that followed, when the storm had finally given way to stillness, there was no return to the emptiness that once lived there. The body lay trembling, the heart still racing, the skin still burning from the memory of touch. Eyes closed, lips swollen, the soul whispered a truth that could not be silenced again. For the first time in decades, life was not something endured. It was something felt, something tasted, something that made every nerve sing with the reminder that to be wanted is to be alive. And in that truth, the awakening of desire was not just about passion. It was about remembering that even after years of silence, the fire never truly dies. It waits, it burns quietly. And when it is finally touched again, it rises like a storm, consuming everything in its path, leaving nothing untouched. It was never about breaking vows or betraying promises. The heart doesn't chase destruction, it chases life. For so many years there had only been silence, the kind that makes laughter feel like a memory and passion feel like something that belonged to another lifetime. The days blurred into one another, predictable, heavy, numb. Smiles had become rehearsed, touch had become mechanical, and the soul had quietly learned to live without fire. But then came that night, and with it, something shifted so completely that even the air felt different. The first time the laughter returned, it felt strange, almost foreign, like a forgotten song playing in the background. A joke, a smile, a warmth in the chest that spread and lingered. It wasn't forced, it wasn't empty. It was alive, and from that moment forward, the dam began to break. For the first time in 20 years, the heart raced not from anxiety or loneliness, but from desire. The blood moved differently, quicker, hotter. The skin tingled in anticipation, and suddenly every nerve that had been asleep was awake again. The touch was electric, but not only because of the body. It was what it meant, to be wanted, to be desired, to be seen with eyes that burned and hands that trembled. It was not an affair with guilt at its center. It was a resurrection, the rediscovery of a self that had been buried under years of routine, years of emptiness. Every kiss was not just a meeting of lips, but a rebirth of identity, a reminder that life had not ended, that beauty and passion could exist even here, even now. The moans that escaped were not simply sounds of pleasure. They were cries of release, of freedom, of rediscovering the part of the soul that had long been silenced. To feel the body tremble under another's weight, to gasp in the rhythm of passion, was to feel alive in a way that no memory could replicate. The sheets tangled, the breath quickened, and with each passing moment, the years of loneliness fell away like shadows retreating before the sun. Every glance carried something sacred, the way his eyes held mine, steady and unflinching, as though searching every corner of a soul that had hidden for too long, the way his lips pressed against my neck, leaving trails of fire that made me gasp and cling tighter. The way laughter and moaning tangled together in the night, shameless and raw, as though both belonged to the same rebirth. It wasn't about sex, it was about life itself. The body responded like it had been waiting, aching, begging for this moment of surrender. Muscles tensed, skin burned, the heart pounded against ribs like it was trying to escape. Every stroke, every kiss, every breath was a reclamation, a taking back of something thought lost forever. The pleasure was undeniable, but beyond it was a deeper truth, the awakening of joy. The kind of joy that makes every nerve alive, every thought vanish, every part of existence surge with the reminder. This is what it means to live. There was no guilt in those moments, no shame, no fear of being wrong. Only the certainty that this was not destruction but resurrection. Every moan was a hymn to life, every laugh a prayer of gratitude, every kiss a promise that the heart was not done yet. For years, the world had been lived in muted tones, but now everything was vivid. Skin against skin, lips on lips, laughter in the dark, the pounding of blood in the ears. The night stretched endlessly, and still, it felt too short. Even when the storm calmed and bodies lay tangled together in the quiet, the fire did not fade. The chest still rose and fell in rhythm with the echoes of passion. The skin still tingled with the memory of hands that had claimed and caressed. The heart still raced with the certainty that this was not fleeting. It was not a mistake, it was a beginning. For the first time in decades, life was not endured, it was lived. The weight of years fell away, and what remained was something pure, something undeniable. To feel young again was not about age or years. It was about being alive enough to laugh, alive enough to moan, alive enough to tremble beneath the weight of another's love. The years of silence could no longer define the story. The fire that had been buried was burning again, brighter than ever, and it would not be put out. Love was no longer a memory locked away in the past. It was alive, burning, breathing here and now. Thank you for being here, for feeling every heartbeat of this story with me. If these words touched something inside you, if they reminded you of the power of love to resurrect even the loneliest soul, then don't leave just yet. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to feel alive again, and subscribe so you never miss another story of passion, longing, and rebirth. Every story here carries fire, and the next one might be the one that awakens yours. Until then, hold on to love. It is never truly gone.